Broadcasting from our New England studio, Solutions Review is proud to showcase PCG and Infor in the Solutions Spotlight, an inside look at enterprise technologies.
I'm Doug Atkinson here at Solutions Review, and welcome to the Solutions Spotlight featuring PCG and Infor, and focused on agility by design, how manufacturers thrive safely amid disruption. Manufacturers are grappling with unprecedented global disruption, from workforce shortages to supply chain bottlenecks. So today, we're hosting a panel of top manufacturing and technology experts who will explore these challenges and show how ERP and smart manufacturing solutions can help organizations adapt, stay resilient, and navigate turbulent times with confidence. To drive this conversation, we have invited ERP expert Kyler Cheatham. Kyler is the Chief Performance Officer at The Confluential. She is also a noted enterprise technology marketer, influencer, and podcaster. Kyler, I'm going to hand this event over to you now. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm definitely excited for this relevant and important discussion today. First, we're going to start with introducing our panelist. So I'm Kyler Cheatham, moderating today from The Confluential, and I'm excited to be joined by Jennifer McNally, Justin DeWitt, and then Patrick Frith. So it's definitely a great jam-packed panel here. So let's just do a quick round robin of introductions. Let's start with you, Jennifer.
Hi, thanks for having me, Kyler. I'm really excited about today's conversation. I'm Jennifer McNally, and I'm the CEO of the American Society of Safety Professionals. I have a pretty deep background in the industrial space in the U.S. and globally, and really looking forward to today's conversation. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. We're happy to have you here. Definitely some great insight we'll hear from Jennifer today. How about you, Justin?
Yeah, thanks again for having me. My name is Justin DeWitt. I'm an industry director for engineering and construction and industrial manufacturing here at PCG. I've been working in the SaaS space to support manufacturing since 2004, supporting different levels of business enterprise modeling. And I've also been on boards of multiple different manufacturers for the past 10 years. So thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us, Justin. Excited to hear from you as well. And Patrick.
Sure. So Patrick Frith, I'm the Senior Director of Cross-Border at Avalara, a US-based company with offices all over the world. My responsibility is to help our customers navigate through the pitfalls associated with cross-border. And as you can imagine, right now that's very topical, given the turmoil that and the turbulence we're seeing with the tariffs.
Absolutely. So let's start this discussion by kind of setting the scene. Right now, we've got so many leaders in the industry trying to figure out and align strategies with operations, with technology, all of these things to make their, overall production resilient. It's definitely a time in which a lot of these disruptions have become kind of the norm. So I'm interested to hear from you, Justin. What are some of these complexities and problems that you're really seeing in the marketplace today?
Yeah, Kyler, thanks. There's a multitude, right? I mean, we live in a constantly evolving world from where we used to be. So what we're actually witnessing, in my opinion, today is like a perfect storm within the manufacturing industry as a whole. So like external shocks are like no longer rare. They're like a reoccurring feature for us. And like areas from like automotive to electronics to food production use, manufacturing in general is just struggling to maintain output consistency while at the same time managing volatility. And what's actually resulting from that is the fact that the traditional systems that we've leaned on for the past 50 plus years, it's now one of the biggest bottlenecks to adaptation. Just as a couple of examples, China's export restrictions that came down recently around minerals like gallium and germanium, they sent shockwaves through the electronics and EV markets back in 2024, almost paralyzing most of the battery manufacturing in the United States. Dependencies just on a single resource region like China has become a liability, and it's exposed a lot of supply chain rigidity.
Absolutely. Such good insight, Justin. It's really a question now of how do we, not avoid disruption, but thrive through it, right? And I know you're going to take us through some tactics to kind of give us some insight around that.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd like to take a moment just to kind of talk a little bit about the industry in crisis, because really that's what it is. The disruption, the inefficiencies, all these different things that manufacturers are facing today is really causing a lot of pullback in their efficiencies and ability to not only scale, but just to be sustainable. If we look at the big picture, and you can kind of see some context that I've got here, the global pressures that we're actually dealing, on manufacturers today, especially SMBs, is affecting their overall ability to do outputs. So supply chain systems are being exposed to the fragilities that we talked about around the supply chain ecosystems being limited. All the disruptors that we're seeing is pulling back on their abilities to be able to be agile. And those are things that's causing core functional issues within the manufacturing. So the disconnect between the operations are not being as efficient because they're focusing too much time on all these disruptors outside of the factory. The manual shop floor executions that they're trying to do, the poor traceabilities that they have on the floor today, not being able to maintain their overall outputs in the overall just outdated planning tools over in general. It's just, they're all fail points, right? So what we're really looking at today is not just supply chain fragility, it's operational inefficiencies applied to that, which is affecting their ability to plan, their ability to produce, their ability to have good quality measures, and is causing, especially areas within the United States in particular, the ability to maintain this relevancy on a global stage. Other countries are completely outperforming us in many of these different areas. The Chinese market is a very growing, scalable market today. So their values and quality controls have gone up tremendously. Their productional outputs have gone up tremendously. And one of the main reasons behind that is because they own so much of the overall raw material operational manufacturing, and they can make quick use out of that. Where for us, being so dependent on one single channel is causing us to fall back quite a bit. And the lack of investment in the overall growth within their organizational values is also causing a lot of points and failures. And that kind of comes down to some areas that we really need to look at, which is the concept of unified operations. Stop working within a silo. So many manufacturers tend to do that. They tend to work within separate areas, not really working cross-functionally. Also, look at what agility components that there are in the fields today. So, we've seen a lot of the taglines around artificial intelligence or, RPA connectivities, different types of components that allow for predictabilities within the factory floors. That allows for more powerful decision making. So, let's not forget about those points. I know it might be cutting edge for some people to think, well, we're still 20 years away from wanting to adopt that, but your competitors are adopting this today, especially outside of this U.S. ecosystem of manufacturing. Also, industry-specific functions. Start to look at your industry and stop looking at yourself as just a manufacturer. What are those specific areas within your industry that creates greater value for your customers, and start to look on leveraging those tactics. And again, when we talk about the concept of security, a lot of people are obviously concerned about working in clouds and working in a virtual environment because of it. But really, it's one of the safest areas. You don't have to maintain your security. Let other companies that are very much prepared for these types of intrusions to be involved in it, to allow them to take control and make sure that it's secure. That allows for not only security, but also scalability, because you're not having the onus of having to maintain the operations of your own ERP systems or just business enterprise systems in general. You're allowing somebody else to maintain that, to make sure that it's going to be the latest, current, most advanced versions that's out there. And you don't have to worry about that. Let your IT systems run themselves through the operational efficiencies in the cloud. And then you focus on these other areas of your business to create a better ecosystem for yourself. And looking at that as an overall concept for resolution planning. If you're looking at those operational silos, well, how do I support that? Well, how about looking at an integrated ERP system, right? A cloud-based solution that allows for a combination of all these areas through more predictability, through different process intelligence modeling, where you have cross-relational activities within a single ecosystem. The same thing for dealing with the planning delays. If we're working on planning scheduling and we're being challenged on trying to get those out and having a good historian of data and relevancy, lean on the AI components. Let those do the mundane work to be able to create those efficiencies. Same thing if we're talking about downtime and wasteful operations. Use IoT to enable those areas so redundant activities can go away. Allow your workers to be more competent, more focused on these areas that they need to be focused on, and take away the repetitive workloads. Inventory blind spots, we can see that right there as a huge concern in the industry today. Real-time data just isn't there. But utilizing technologies to get that real-time data for supply chain visibilities and overall production visibilities is going to increase your efficiencies quite a bit. And again, we talked about the safety and compliance risk before, but utilizing automated compliance tools and auditing tools allows you to be able to have greater predictability in your safety and greater compliance within your overall operations. And at the end of the day, it's really focusing on trying to reduce the downtime and increase your overall inventory accuracy, and then create a faster reaction time to different levels of disruptions through having that level of diversity and that ability to be agile within your overall operational systems. One of the points that I'd like to kind of mention a little bit too, Kyler, is, what's the concept of agility and why do we need to really focus on it? Well, people need to understand that agility isn't optional for them. It's actually a survival mechanism. Cloud-based ERPs, they have to be resilient, they have to be predictable, and they have to be scalable and sustainable. And, whether it's Infor or whether it's any application, to be honest, moving forward into a cloud-based ecosystem that is maintained with the most current, most relevant level of data is going to allow your businesses to operate on that agile motion. You're going to be on a pivot now and a swivel instead of just looking in a single direction. So make sure that whenever you're choosing an operation, no matter what application it is, that you have a system that allows you to make those informed decisions, that you can respond quickly to market changes with your tool sets that you have, and that you can build a sustainable, more future-ready ecosystem for your business, so that way you can grow along with the evolution of the tools that you're building around. At the end of the day, though, I think that the main thing that people really need to understand is that manufacturing is technology-based today. So we need to move from where we've been operating at from the 1950s and 60s technology concepts and constructs and start moving towards a more advanced agile methodology.
Absolutely. I mean, this is such a great overview of kind of not only where the industry's at, but where it's going and really how you can be in control of your own destiny. And I know we're going to shift over to Jennifer, and she's going to kind of take us through a safety lens of how we not only move through being agile as a business, right, but also being safe and prioritizing our people. So Jennifer, kind of switching over to you in that mindset, how do we design for agility without compromising the safety of our people?
So, great question. And I'll say, Justin, thank you for sort of setting the stage for one of the problems. I'm going to take a step back and in about the 2013, 2014 timeframe, I happened to chair the World Economic Forum's Future of Manufacturing Council. And, we mean this in the nicest sense as somebody who spent a great deal of time supporting manufacturers. We've met the enemy and it is us. And part of it gets to the tug and pull of today's call on the profit margin and tomorrow's call on systems change and efficiency. And it's incredibly complex. In every facility I have been through in my career, it's even more complex. And if you add to it, the one constant is change. A lot of people talk about, VUCA, and what does that mean for manufacturing when the only constant is change? And in my mind, the agility and leaning into agility is about systems-based informed decision-making, full stop. Because every day the decision could be different. And if you look at it, every year I get on the phone and spend the first 3 months of my year on the phone with executives. We'll make sure there's a copy of our corporate listening tour in there. But it is the need, which, Justin, you didn't even mention, add to it the regulatory uncertainty that manufacturers face here in the United States. And I said this last week. I was in a room full of contractors, and it was and imagine if not only are you attempting to compete globally, but imagine 50 states all having a different regulatory environment. During my time at the National Manufacturers, at the Manufacturing Institute, the nonprofit arm and the NAM, there were some really great data about the cost of regulation and what that means, and bring into that climate change or any other, conflict minerals. If you talked about sourcing, what happens when everything else is put on the small and medium manufacturer, because that is 80% of our nation's manufacturers. They're not big OEMs. And in my mind, the term I often used with manufacturers is sort of threefold. It's workplace, work, and workforce. What we are doing is different. Technology, innovation. From a safety lens, I think about the regulatory environment that is so outdated. They don't have basics associated with things like lockout, tagout, technology is moving at the pace of business and regulation is not. So how do companies lean into things like what good looks like, global consensus standards, and each other as, Justin, as you described, as an ecosystem? They do it because they have evidence-based, data-driven decision-making that hits the boardroom, and that the frontline worker who is trying to meet everybody's demands is empowered to say, hey, this is not safe. If you add to it, there's this, as long as I have most of my professional career, but we've now landed there in the volatility, in addition to the systems and the disruptions. We're really good at one-off disruptions. We're really good at planning. We're really good at responding. Our nation rallied around COVID. It was focused. It was here. We were acting day in and day out. What I hear from industry leaders year over year is disruption is constant and at every level. It is no longer a single incident to remanage the supply chain. It is rethinking the supply chain and rethinking sourcing. And the other big challenge that comes up in this is institutional knowledge and longevity when the only constant is change in the workforce. It is a changing social compact of expectations of what business looks like. And at the heart of manufacturing, in addition to technology, is people. What do we do when we have open jobs and individuals that aren't moving into them? How do we redesign work because we have systems information that says, hey, let's get this out and move this in? I'm a big fan of prevention through design. Let's do it the right way the first time. So there is so much to unpack, but in order for boards of directors and CEOs and frontline workers to understand their role, you really need to have a systems-based approach and good data and information. And there's a lot of good and bad. I think there's a conversation to be had around global governance on AI and the use of technology, what data to what end. There was a point in time where, data about me was a fit for work, fit for duty kind of information. But I'm sadly one of those people that thinks Apple and Google know everything about me already. So I've given up on the battle. But what is the global governance of data? What does it mean? How is it used? How does it inform decision-making? And what does it mean for the workforce that has impacts and implications? But I think it's as much an answer. It doesn't remove the production worker. It doesn't remove the frontline manager. It doesn't remove CEOs, though I do hear CEOs are eminently replaceable with the AI. It creates and empowers them. Good data allows for better decision-making, longer-term forecasting, and a lot of scenario planning. What happens if then, like that? Ask the question and you have an answer. So as frustrating as it may seem to our nation's small and medium manufacturers, lean into good data, information, and systems planning. Because that, to me, whether it's on the workforce front, on the product innovation front, or on the AI front, it's that mindset in an environment of uncertainty and volatility that we all know is only going to continue, that we keep manufacturing strong.
Absolutely. I mean, there's so much to unpack there. That's what I call a rewatcher. So definitely rewind that and pull out so many key points that Jennifer touched on. And we're going to actually go over to a group of demos. First, we have Gideon Peters from the Infor team, and then we have Patrick from Avalara that are going to take us through some system demos.
My name is Michael Sullivan, and I'm a solution consultant here at Infor, and I will be demoing our CSIE solution today. I will be showing our C-level role-based workspaces, the Infor process catalog, process mining, analytics, and generative AI capabilities. First, we're taking a look at our Chief Supply Chain Officer role-based workspace. It is fully equipped to align demand with inventory, and this workspace will help meet revenue targets, minimize carrying costs, and empower the supply chain leaders with the correct insights to balance performance, profitability, and efficiency. Like all of our workspaces, they are configurable by the user, being able to move the widgets around to their preferred location and size. Again, this is going to be designed so when you start your day, you're able to take a look at what's most important to you, and you're able to take actionable insights for the rest of your day. Again, we're able to hover over any of these points and able to see that level of detail that we might see. We are also able to see a variety of those on-time targets that we want to see, along with what our targets are overall. Again, all of these are able to be defined by that user. Next, we're going to take a look at our Chief Financial Officer workspace. This workspace is going to enable that CFO to meet revenue targets, optimize cash flow, control costs, and mitigate financial risks. With these insights and decision-making tools, it's going to help to drive sustainable profitability and align financial strategies with our business goals. So again, being the CFO of the organization, we're able to see what some of our targets are. We're able to see maybe what our EBITDA is, and maybe that's something that's very important for me in my role. So again, we're able to pull out the most important key metrics and the KPIs for my role, and I'm able to see those at a glance right from my dashboard. Again, like we saw on our Chief Supply Chain Officer, being able to hover over any specific targets, we're able to see those numbers in greater detail. From here, we're going to talk a little bit about our Sales Manager dashboard. The key points to talk about on this the Sales Manager dashboard is we're able to start seeing these quarter widgets. These quarter widgets can be a variety of different metrics. As I can see here, these are ones I have created that I would feel important to me being a sales manager. So related to quotes, new business partners, returns, orders entered, and shipments that we are shipping out daily. So again, we're able to see how we're trending, whether it's a count or a percentage, also what we're seeing for those values, overall counts, and then again, maybe it's a month to date. Another key point to talk about here is looking at our process mining. So process mining is going to take a look at our Infor process catalog, and then all of the clicks and following that cycle time from start to end, and if we're following our business processes. So we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to process intelligence. But again, being able to see where we're landing for our cycle time compared to our industry benchmarking capabilities. As with most of our dashboards here, we're able to see all of our information is going to be drillable. So again, maybe I want to take a look at my late sales orders. Just by clicking on the graph here, I'm able to drill directly into the application. The applicable filter is going to apply to that session, and it's going to bring all of those relevant orders, or order lines in this case, to the screen for me. So again, what we're able to see is all of our past due planned delivery dates. We're also able to see any conditional formatting that we might have set up on our screen. So we're able to see that information just with a glance directly from those dashboards. Next, we're going to talk a little bit about our process intelligence capabilities. So again, we're going to look at our process viewer. The process viewer is going to be talking about our Infor process catalog. These are our standard end-to-end business processes for our solution here. So again, we're going to drill into our order to cash. And again, we can see that we have them across the entire business organization, but we're going to focus in on our process sales order process. So from here, we're able to see from start to end all the steps that are going to typically take place during the processing of a sales order, from order entry all the way from pick, pack, ship the materials. So again, during the process, you'll go through this. And again, this is able to be configured and designed to match your business processes or match that future state business processes. So understanding that some of these steps might not be applicable for your business today, or there might be some steps added, all of that's able to be added and defined in this process. What we're also able to see here is all of these processes, when we are able to click onto them, are able to give us a little bit more of that information about that creating a sales order. Where is it taking place? What session is that taking place in within the application itself? So again, what we're able to start doing here is using these IPC catalogs when defined with your business process, one, as a blueprint for when we start looking at process intelligence and process mining, but also as a training opportunity to provide maybe new users in your business that don't have a full end-to-end picture of that business process, to have that end-to-end business process documented for your organization. Taking a look from our process viewer, we're going to take a look at our process insights. So our process insights here is for our order to cash session here. So what we can see here is we have the number of cases. So these are the number of cases that have gone in and gone through the quote to cash process. We see the number of variants. So those are the different processes it took when entered. And again, we have this little North Star looking option here. When I click that, I'm actually able to generate a process summary. And this process summary is going to go through, take a look at this data, and start pulling out key information that I can start taking actionable insight on related to these insights. So again, the order to shipment's taking quite a long time. So we can see, hey, there's a bottleneck potentially here. We're also able to see some key insights that the generative AI is pulling out for us, and also some recommendations on where to take a deeper look into things. Again, we can start looking at this by sales office, overall as an organization, so we're able to define and look at it as close or as tightly as we want to during that process. Something else that we're able to take a look at here is taking a look at our case details. So again, all of those are going to be down on that granular level, but when we start looking at it at a higher level on our conformance analysis, we're able to start looking at all of our different variants. So in this example, we can see variant 9 here is going to be a reprint of the packing slip. So it's going to go through the standard process, and we see it's going back and forth and doing some reprinting of the packing slip. So you know what? Maybe they're reprinting it because there's some inventory inaccuracies that we can see in variant 9. Variant 26, for example, is we're going to see that there's a modification to the sales order, and then there's going to be a cancel. So in this example, what we actually will see, it's probably going to be a process issue that somebody's going to try to modify it. They don't know that they should just cancel it directly before modifying it. So again, this is going to be a training opportunity. And then if we look at variant 54, particularly, we see there's 59 cases where somebody's entering a dummy sales order to drive the demand, and then they cancel the order. So again, this is instead of using the planning features within the application, maybe sales is entering dummy orders just to get an excess level of inventory for another reason. So again, we're able to take some of these actionable insights and see some of these variants. And again, all the clicks, which users are taking these, are all going to be documented, so you can take that actionable insight on this. We're going to talk a little bit about our analytics tool. So our analytics tool has a number of different collections. So we can see it from sales all the way down to procurement, service, and quality. Particularly right now, we're looking at our opportunity manager. The value of our LN analytics tool that's built right in is having actionable pre-built dashboards that we're able to start seeing data trends and able to drill a little bit deeper on this information. So on this information, we can see we have 314 opportunities. We have some trending over time. We have the ability, if we don't maybe want to look at a line chart, we can maybe look at it as a pie chart. So again, we're able to have that configuration, whatever is most important to us. We are also able to start drilling deeper into the data. So I can see I have a lot of data here, but maybe I only want to focus on 2024. I'm just going to select the 2024 data. And again, all of that filtered, updated the relevant tabs here. So we can see all of this information as updated. And then again, we're able to start seeing at it in that more granular level. So if maybe I just want to focus in on my one count, we're able to start taking a deeper dive, drilling into that and seeing, hey, these are all of those that might be one. So again, we're starting to able to see that deeper level information when we go into those details of that information. From here, we're going to talk a little bit about the generative AI capabilities within the Project 360. So again, we can see here that we have a project. We have a variety of activities on the project. We also have right on our taskbar here, our generative AI. So again, selecting our generate project executive summary, the system's going to be going through the process of looking at our activities, seeing what might be behind, what's on time, what has been completed, and if there are any bottlenecks, and also providing any recommendations that might be appropriate for the project manager to take action upon. So we can see some overview, some general statuses, how we're doing overall in performance, some budgeting information, and it also is able to provide some suggestions. So on this one, it's saying take a look at some of the offsite fabrication to identify what's going on with some of those delays, and also be able to provide the conclusion. We're able to easily copy this entire information and then be able to share it potentially out in an email or another application, whatever might be relevant to sharing this information. The reason this is so important is being able to free up some of those project managers' times to provide more value-add tasks rather than going in step by step, taking a look at activities, trying to figure out where those bottlenecks exist. They're able to quickly and easily, with a click of a button, be able to generate these reports and spend less time drafting emails and spend more time driving value add to the project and the organization as a whole. Thank you very much.
Okay, great. Thanks for that. So let's switch gears and let's talk about tariffs, trade and tariffs, the turbulence that we're all experiencing. I want to first take you through the latest news. You may remember back in April, 2nd of April in the Rose Garden, the White House administration presented on what was called Liberation Day, the tariffs, the reciprocal tariffs that the US was to impose on countries around the world. Now, there's a list of 59 of those countries which are receiving reciprocal tariffs. We've got a small sample here on the left-hand side. You can see the countries are listed, but there's more than that. The full list is 59. And what you see alongside the country is what the US perceived to be the tariffs charged to US exporters going into those countries. This is actual tariffs, this is currency manipulation, barriers to trade, so on and so forth. So what the US administration did was they halved that number. That's the one you can see in the dark yellow column. They halved that number, and these are the reciprocal tariffs which were imposed on countries on the 9th of April, except there was a pause. There was a 90-day pause, if you remember, and that is now coming to an end. We're 2 weeks away from the end of that pause, which is going to be lifted on July the 9th. And we can, unless there are trade deals, we can expect to see those reciprocal tariffs imposed on the countries when they import products into the US. So we're not far away from it. Where do we stand right now? Well, this is fresh as of this week. So we know there's been some back and forth with China. Currently, the import tariffs from China to the US stand at 55% plus, because of course Section 301 is a variable and that can be added to the 55. Canada and Mexico, it's been quiet from the north and the south border, but they have a zero tariff on USMCA compliant goods and tariffs on goods outside of that. The other big talking point is the rest of the world, specifically the EU. There are tariffs imposed, as you can see on the screen, and we are yet to hear of a deal between the US and the EU. The UK got a deal. You might remember that at the G7. Starmer and Trump agreed a deal, which was favorable for both countries. We are yet to hear from Europe, so time will tell. We're running out of time. We've only got 2 weeks left until the pause is lifted, but we will see if something comes out of those negotiations and discussions between the countries. Now, the other important thing, that's all the tariff. That's reciprocals, retaliatory, that's all the tariff stuff. The other important point that we must not lose sight of is the fact that de minimis has ended for goods originating in China and Hong Kong. So what does that mean? The US has a de minimis threshold of $800. That is now zero. So anything which is made in China, made in Hong Kong, originated from either of those two locations, does not get the $800 de minimis threshold, and duty is applied from anything of any value that enters into the US from those territories. There is also, in the big, beautiful bill, which is currently going through, there is also the elimination of de minimis entirely from July the 1st, 2027. We are yet to see if that will actually take place, but it is looming, it's on the horizon. So what are the implications to your business? They are very, very widespread. But one thing I cannot stress enough is making sure you are fully aware and compliant on the 4 pieces of global trade. We call it the 4 horsemen, but these are 4 key elements that you must be aware of in your business, whether you're importing or you're exporting, doing business cross-border. You must be aware of the de minimis exceptions. I just mentioned China and Hong Kong a moment ago. You need to be aware of that. Country of origin. You must be aware of the country of origin. This is where the product was substantially manufactured or fabricated or milled. Wherever that substantial work was done, that is your country of origin, not where it's shipped through. It can go all around the world before it arrives to the US. It doesn't change the country of origin. Your tariff code classification. This is your HS code. This identifies your products and directly is linked to the amount of duty that will be levied on that product. You have to have your classification correct. It has to be accurate. You can't classify leather shoes as textbooks and hope to get a better duty rate. That's not allowed. It's illegal. That's misclassification. So you have to classify your goods correctly when they enter the country. And then finally, declared value. This is the value of the product that's being imported into the US. If it's transferring from one office to another office of the same company, it's the cost of the actual product. But if you're selling it to an end consumer, it's the sale price. That's the declared value. So those 4 pieces of the jigsaw, you have to be very familiar with and very compliant. A little point here on the country of origin versus country of point of origin. As I mentioned, it's where the product was substantially processed or assembled versus where it came from. And the CBP, you can see in the central panel here, the CBP Office of Trade have made this very clear. There is no transshipping. You can't declare the last port as the country of origin. It has to be because there are consequences. There is inventory seizure. There are fines, criminal charges, possibly business disruption, undoubtedly, and potentially the loss of import privileges. If you're not following CBP on LinkedIn, I suggest you do. This is where this came from because they're very up to date and they're very good at communicating their position on global trade with respects to the tariffs and what's going on at the moment. So impacts, we're seeing impacts. We speak to our customers and our partners regularly. We're seeing impacts, and I've put them into 4 buckets here. So I think we're all feeling the rising costs and the price hikes. Many of the goods that we consume in the US are produced overseas, and therefore tariffs are levied onto them, particularly after the 3-month pause is over. Tariffs are levied onto them. So that's a reality, and we're feeling that today. Supply chain, it has an impact on the supply chain. And we are seeing customers and partners who are looking to source the widget, the raw material, the product, the commodity of similar quality from other origins, because those other origins perhaps have got more preferential tariff duties. So tariff engineering is what we call it, and we are seeing that displayed amongst the companies and the partners that we speak with. Inevitably, there's going to be layoffs and restructuring. I think Volvo just recently announced layoffs of 3,000 people in the US, directly linked to the automotive tariffs. So we are seeing those cost pressures. And of course, if you can't sell your products because the tariffs are too high to bring it in, and it's beyond the price point of your buyers, then you have no choice really other than to restructure your organization, which can include layoffs. And then finally, we're hearing about the cash flow and the margin compression. More duty is having to be paid upon the product's entry into the US. The product hasn't necessarily been sold yet. So we're seeing that cash flow challenge across companies and partners that we speak with. And just some fast facts here, just to put some numbers around some of this. Yes, we are seeing the US May results. There was a decline, almost 1 percentage point, and we expect to see that to continue. And just a few other things here. 54% of companies who were surveyed by the insurer Allianz say that they're going to have to raise their prices to accommodate the tariffs. It's a direct cost, so they're going to have to raise their prices. And a few other percentages and fast facts on that slide there. So proactive steps, what can companies do? Well, again, we speak to our partners and our customers, and we're seeing a trend. So they are exploring the diversification of their sourcing and their shipping carriers. So we are seeing that activity take place. Automation. They're moving towards automation. So many countries, so many different tariff rates, so many different HS codes being affected at a different rate. It gets too confusing to do it without automation. So being compliant is absolutely necessary. Automating that compliance is becoming necessary as well. Working with their customs brokers. Of course, the customs broker is the person who clears it when it enters the country. So working with the brokers, leaning in on their expertise and their network to see if they can improve the supply chain to make sure they get their goods to their customers in as short a time as possible. And then the product details, making sure that the product details are compliant. Remember the 4 horsemen that I mentioned? Making sure that every single one of those check boxes is ticked so your products are compliant. Customs don't want to hold products up in warehouses at the port of entry. They want trade to flow. So help yourself by ensuring that you are compliant and you're paying the correct duties, your declared values correct, your country of origin is correct, so your products can flow through. And then finally, we're seeing customers building inventory to absorb short-term headwinds. We did have that 90-day pause that I mentioned. It's coming to an end now. We saw a lot of activity in that 90 days whilst the tariffs were reduced or postponed, I should say. Who knows what's going to happen after 2 weeks when the pause is lifted? We'll just have to wait and see, and we'll report back once we've seen what's happening in the market. And here you go. Can you keep up with the changes? Absolutely, you can. Okay, because what you don't want is penalties, fines, delays for non-compliance. You saw the list from CBP that I presented a couple of slides ago. You don't want those consequences on your business. You don't want to be under or overpaying duties. You want to be bang on. You want to make sure that your HS codes are correct, your declared value is correct, and therefore you're paying the absolute correct amount of duty. And who wants added cost in their supply chain? Nobody. But if you don't get 1 and 2 right, step 1 and 2 right, you're going to have delays in your supply chain. And we all know what delays means: warehousing costs, the indirect revenue opportunity that is missed because of the extended supply chain. So don't risk that. And do upstream, make sure that you're compliant. And if you think that you're alone, well, you're not, because 55%, we did a survey recently, 55% of customers were finding this challenging. And yes, it certainly is. But we're here to help. Avalara are here to help in these circumstances. And that wraps it up. Back over to you, Kyla.
Great. So this was all such good information to kind of set the stage. I want to have a little bit more of a conversation with you, Justin and Jennifer, to kind of talk through how can we actually activate a lot of these strategies? Because I think a lot of barriers that our core manufacturing clients or just industry in general sees is they don't even know where to start with a lot of these types of things. I know, Jennifer, you mentioned data, and Justin, you mentioned, some efficiencies that they can leverage with technology. I want to kind of go to you first, Justin, and talk about looking at building those agile systems that you talked about. How do you ensure that your overall business is ready to be proactive in these types of strategies as opposed to just reacting in this stage of crisis that you mentioned?
Kyler, that's a great statement. And, to be honest, it comes down to how do you implement. Implementation strategy is critical core for the success of any transformational journey you do. And what I've seen in my 20 plus years of working in this industry is that you have to start off with a good solid foundation, a good solid planning strategy to be able to operate against this. You have to understand your resource constraints. You have to be honest with yourself about where you are as far as capability growth, organizational change management, and this the overall ecosystem that you're working within currently in your business. The future state is always in mind. You always want to be able to work towards your future state. But at the same time, you have to understand what your limitations are, and you have to build around your limitations. Resourcing, operational efficiencies, existing ecosystems of technology that you're working with today, take all of those into consideration to be able to build a more solid, more rounded approach. Now, I'd like to take a moment to actually showcase a little bit of an implementation strategy. Let's start off talking about some of the challenges that people actually face in successfully implementing and overall conducting an ecosystem of implementation. One of the big things that we see is the complex integrations with existing systems. People tend to want to look towards getting so much of a future state built out at once that it ends up dragging them down and it ends up overcomplicating the process. So think about what are the efficiencies that you're trying to achieve and how can we actually adopt towards those and then focus on just those areas. You can always build around it later. The future is a long period of time. So let's look towards what we need to do today to be able to remain competitive, and then focus on those necessities and then build around those secondly. The other areas that we kind of see is like the high implementation cost and time. That's a big barrier for a lot of SMBs. They're looking at it from kind of a price point. We want to be able to scale to a large global enterprise, but I don't have the budget today to do that. So how can I actually formulate a business model, to move forward, to be able to be successful, what we're trying to achieve, to put us on the right track, to be globally expansive, but not bust the budget in the way, in the process of doing that. And then again, it talks about the users, right? The end of the day, your technology can be as amazing as any other technology in the world. But if your users aren't adopting it, and if they're not following through the process of learning how to use it effectively and efficiently, it's going to fall flat on its face. So you have to have strong user adoption. You have to have a strong change management construct in there to be able to support your actual employees and your user groups as you go through this type of an ecosystem. Now, one of the things that we've seen within the SMB overall market scope is trying to understand an assessment of where they're trying to get to, and then where they're trying to grow to. So those are two separate areas, but the problems that we often face are with those challenges, where they want to get to is very far down the road. They're looking at a 5-year projection roadmap to scale their business quite a bit. And how they're wanting to get there is by doing everything at once. And as I talked about, scale back to your efficiencies, right? Scale back to the core, the base. And one of the things that we found is by doing that and implementing it more through a measured ecosystem, a minimally viable product approach, it allows you to focus just on the central areas that's going to create the most efficiencies immediately for your business, and then build out a more long-term roadmap to approach these in a phase-by-phase approach. That way you can get the value earlier. You're reducing the overall cost, reducing the time to delivery for that. And then you're spending less time trying to teach your overall team end-to-end processes. Just focus on those areas that's going to be the most valuable for them. Let them learn that, adopt it, get used to that operational strategy, and then add to that operational strategy as forms of enhancements. Now, kind of talking about the concept of benefits of what you get with that. Well, again, agility. Right? Jennifer did a great job talking and resounding the concept of agility and some of the needs of it in manufacturing. Focusing on a minimally viable approach allows you to be more agile. You can stream and grow your business in the areas that it needs to be, instead of just trying to create the entire ecosystem from scratch, right? Providing areas around scalability, defining that phase approach, having better business control and insights, and then looking at areas of different types of structures towards, sprint modeling, right? That way, if I have a resource constraint, let's take those resources and let's work through an approach where they learn, adopt, train. That way they know the knowledge up front, and you have an actual ecosystem internally in your business of solution and operational professionals. As much as I love it, as a consultant, for companies to come and lean on me as the professional and then pay me to come in and help, constantly support and move their business forward. At the end of the day, if you're going to grow as a company, you have to have that intelligence and that capability internalized as well. So developing a core kernel team of people that are going to be able to support these benefits are going to be critical core for your guys to be successful. Now, as far as kind of talking a little bit about us and what we provide, Infor has an amazing solution within their LN CloudSuite, but again, it's very robust. It's for the scalability of a large global enterprise company. So knowing that, there's a scale back solution that they've actually had, and we saw that with some of the demos of how amazing the product capabilities can be. But looking at it from a pre-built model, what that does is it allows that solution to be scaled back to that MVP approach, right? So you're getting the components of the application that you need to be able to hit those immediate needs for your business. And then what we do is we actually provide an implementation approach that allows for more of a phased, lean, agile component structure to get it out there to you faster. Training your team earlier on, validating the capabilities of your team's knowledge on that, getting your data and your information into that ecosystem, and then getting it released to you within a 5 to 6 month time range. So that way you're not working on a 2-3 year project and not really seeing the benefits of it until the very end. You're actually getting that early stage adoption. By the time we get to the end of that 2 to 3 year phase, the team is fully adoptable to the system. They're knowledgeable of it. You have that core kernel team of administrators within your business who actually knows how to operate and run the business. And that creates a more a more agile, more growth valued, more diversified environment. And some of the outcomes that you can expect if you actually roll towards a more MVP based approach is obviously the faster time to value, right? 5 to 6 months, getting it out the door, and then building on that phased approach as you go. The lower cost of ownership, because you're only really investing in the areas that you need the efficiencies in, instead of building a whole model of an end-to-end solution that you may not see value of for the next 5, maybe 6 years. Scalable foundation needs, being able to grow your business along with the tool set that you need and only using the tool set structures that you need based on where you currently are in your overall industry. And then making sure that you're not too IT heavy. At the same time, you have to understand that the technology is a tool set for your people, right? So your people has to learn and adopt and grow alongside of it. Don't overstretch your IT capabilities beyond what your business needs really are. And then making sure that your enterprise capabilities around that is transformational. Building around the components of let's train the people, let's focus on organizational change management, understand that the individuals that work in your company are just as important as the technology that you're putting in their hands. And if you can apply all of these different areas in your business, you're going to be able to get the values that we were showing in the systems earlier and what Jennifer had actually mentioned herself. You're going to be able to adopt all of those value points in your business, and it's going to allow you to move more around those disruptors that we're seeing in the ecosystem today a lot more nimbly than a lot of your competitors.
Absolutely. I mean, this is such a critical approach of really understanding how you break down that technology and implement it. I think, Jennifer, you had mentioned that 80% of, the customers you service are kind of in this SMB bucket, right? That they're, trying to be able to figure out what strategies they can inactivate or bring into their overall fold when it comes to people, process, technology, and strategy. So I'm curious to kind of go to you and look at this MVP approach that Justin just outlined and understand how we do that. We be efficient, we be lean, we really focus on how to implement this, but still prioritize our people and our overall safety initiatives.
So that's a really great question. And I will say, without keeping workers safe, you have no workers. But I think about it's interesting. I think about technology and I think about the role that it plays in keeping workers safe and creating transparency in the information. And Justin, as you were talking about sort of systems change, I got my plan, do, check, act. Let's keep going around the cycle. We can always do it better. We can always do it stronger. We can always do it faster. I also thought a little bit about Margaret Mead's quote, the anthropologist, and, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens could change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. I think those same principles get to company culture and the why. I think about the facilities where I walk on the floor and I interact. And it is the first and foremost, it's not just change management, it's the connection to why. Why do I show up every single day and do this? Because the nobility of what I do in American manufacturing and global manufacturing makes the world a better place. I save lives with what I produce. I feed the world if you're in agro manufacturing. It is the connection to why that is people driven. And with that, supporting people with the use of information and technology, it's a tool. It's a tool, but you got to have everybody understand the what, the why, and how we're going there together. And that, to me, as Justin talks about the ecosystem, and it is the OEM, it is the OEM supply chain, it is the people all feeling part. And I have a lot of passion around those people that make things because they drive the world. They create economic security. They buy cars and live in communities and every day wake up. And they need to be able to do their job the best way they can. Every worker shows up every single day with a commitment to do their best. And good information and good systems help. And Justin, I loved how you talked about, I often think about it in car terms. Early in my career, I'm a car gal. I got the nickname of spark plug by the OEMs. But, don't buy the Cadillac if that's not what you need. So it really understands, with leadership understanding, what is the pain point we're trying to solve to today? How do you stage in step one? And first and foremost, courageous leadership. In times of agility, you need to be able to take calculated risk. Safety is a risk management function. What are the unintended consequences of having new technologies and a different distraction on the line day in and day out? You have to go through all of those things by engaging the workforce at every single level, by engaging management to help everybody understand, here's where we are, here's where we're going, and here's how we will succeed together. So really great discussion. And I often say, the most important thing you do is just start. You're going to make mistakes along the way. You're going to not pick some of the right things or wrong things. But in absence of action, you have, and we as a nation and manufacturing as an industry will lose its competitive edge, period.
Yeah, that's absolutely powerful. Prioritizing each layer of the organization, bringing them into those feedback loops, making them feel not only safe, but psychologically safe to be the ones that are speaking up. I wonder, Justin, how does that kind of move fast and adapt MVP approach go to engaging each layer of the organization and the importance of including that human side, as Jennifer said? Can you kind of speak to that a little bit?
Oh, absolutely, Kyler. The one thing that I see it's most impactful is you have to consider it as a top-down approach. I think Jennifer, as a CEO, can vouch for that if you don't have executive alignment and you don't have executive level support in your organization, it doesn't matter how much of a good idea it is, it's not going to be something that's going to move across the board and actually be as impactful, because people are not going to adopt it if they don't see their management and their executive team supporting it. So when we look at that and we work with organizations, we the first thing that we do is we step up and say, listen, we have to sit down and talk to your executives. We need to talk to your managers. We need to talk to them first and make sure that we have full on alignment and agreeability with what we're getting ready to do before we go down and start talking and rationalizing the pain points. Because the people at the bottom, the people working there, it's actually doing the heavy lifting in the companies. They're the ones that's in the trenches every single day. They understand what are those problems, what are those areas. Your procurement officer knows the current issues in the current ecosystem of problems within the supply chain. What are those disruptors they're facing? The people that's working on the assembly line, they know what they're seeing coming in and out every single day. They know the QC problems. They know the overall operational delays that they're dealing with. They know the workarounds that they're having to get through because of the antiquated or worn system that they're working in. We can gather that information and we can resound exactly what needs to be done there, but without having that foothold at the top level and having that support to actually move through that, identify those problems and build a foundation towards a future plan and start to model one step at a time. It doesn't have to be everything, right? You do it baby steps, but model that process from beginning to end. That's really the only way that you're going to get an effective change within the system.
Absolutely. Definitely critical points in there of engaging each tier. That alignment starts at the top. And then also, I love how you touched on the importance of understanding the frontlines experience, right? That how things are made, really engaging those people are so critical to being successful in any sort of change, whether it be technology, process, what have you. So Jennifer, I know you've seen this on a global scale. So I wondered if you'd be okay if we tapped into your experience a little bit about how you've seen leadership do this really well. What are some fundamentals that you've seen throughout your work in manufacturing that you've seen leaders be able to really set the tone for, we're going to leverage technology to be more efficient, but yet we hear you and we'll keep you safe at the same time?
It's a great question. And I and Justin, I would say, and it is the C-suite and those doing the work, garbage in, garbage out in any system. And I hear that all the time. A couple of years ago, and I know we're going to make available a corporate listening tour. And again, in an environment where we're dealing with uncertainty, I will say it's a governance issue. And it starts in the boardroom. It's not just the C-suite. In order to keep everybody safe, we have to have good information. We have to understand the risks. We have to have connectivity across the supply chain. And so many times, the processes are outpacing what is, and you use the term minimal viable product. I'm going to use the regulatory environment as the minimal, yet thousands of workers are injured on the job every single day. And take that to a global scale. By the time this podcast's finished, statistically in the United States, there will have been an incident in the workplace. And so many of those are preventable when we have the ability to have access to good information. And so many times in the boardroom, and whether it's a publicly held company or a privately held, family owned, I love those manufacturers. But in the end, that is where decisions are made, and that is where culture is created. And it is through the people and through the access to information that policies and protocols get set. And then how we, in fact, bring in that decision making to execute is where rubber hits the road. But you need the tools. You need the core commitment to safety as a value. And I've never met a CEO that, is proud of an incident in the workplace. That is not it. Especially in manufacturing, the workforce is family, but it shouldn't take an incident to make things change. And what does that? Good information. Connecting across, not outsourcing out, holding supply chains accountable for the same sort of infrastructure. And then the last thing, and Justin, you touched on this a little bit, and I hear this a lot, and make it easy, Jennifer. How do you make information, the use of the information, and our most strongest investment, the people that do the work, have access to that in a way that they can actually use it? And it takes technology to do that, period. I sadly still hear people are filling out forms. Somewhere, people that do and don't know what a fax machine is. But we have to think about that too, and we have to make it really simple. And every day, as an executive and as a board, ask the hard questions of how will this help our customers, our workforce, and our company, and how do we make it easy? What are we doing to make their lives better today? And, technology is a piece of that answer.
Absolutely. Such a powerful answer. Well, thank you so much to both of you, Jennifer and Justin, for sharing this really important conversation, so relevant, so critical to our manufacturers in which we have the honor of serving. Just real quick, I'm going to go to both of you and then Patrick as well to just let our audience know how they can get in touch with you or follow you for more information around this really critical subject matter. So Justin, if you wouldn't mind just giving us a little follow-up of how our users can get in touch with you, that'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, you can go to pcgservices.com and go to any of our areas there and fill out some information to talk to the company directly. If you would like to talk to me specifically, you can reach out to me at pcgservices.com via my email, and I'll be happy to get back with you.
Awesome. Great. And Jennifer, how about you?
Absolutely. ASSP's website is ASSP.org. I know we've put in links there. I can also be reached at jmcnelly@ASSP.org. And I'm big at putting out stuff in social media, so please connect up with me with LinkedIn. I still stay closely in touch with my manufacturing colleagues, but I'm so grateful for today because, again, every workplace needs to keep their workforce safe, and we're here to help.
Amen. Absolutely. And last but certainly not least, Patrick.
So if you need help with compliance, if you need help with HS codes, if you need help with calculating duties and taxes, come visit us, Avalara.com. We have a cross-border team who are ready to help. Register with us, and we'll get in touch with you to help you navigate the pitfalls that are ahead of us in this turbulent time. Thank you very much, Carla. It's been great.
Excellent. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. Thank you to our lovely panelists. What a great discussion, and we will see you next time.
So there you have it, another solution in our spotlight. We want to thank Kyler, PCG, and Infor for that presentation, and we appreciate your attendance as well. Until next time, I'm Doug Atkinson here at Solutions Review. Thanks for watching.
If your business would like to be featured in a future event, contact us today.